Mark Levin is the best political analyst that I've ever listened to. And excuse the fact that this is an interview on Fox. And you'll notice how they have put a picture in disarray of his boxes of documents, which I can guarantee you almost positively that's a photo from when the FBI went rummaging through those boxes. So that's an old photo. It's pretty disingenuous by not telling us when that photo was taken. Because I'm sure somebody as wise as Trump, who is a billionaire, would never have documents or anything else cluttered onto the floor. The other photos in here are actually the way he probably kept them. And they were in a bathroom with a locked door. So all of this is bullshit. We know what it's about. They think we don't know what they're up to, and it's not going to change a friggin' thing.
Welcome.
Well, I read the indictment, thank you, and there's a lot of fury. How many documents were actually destroyed? Doesn't say. How many documents were actually altered? Doesn't say. Wouldn't you think if documents were destroyed and altered that would be right at the beginning of the indictment list of charges? We have boxes removed. Okay, so what? What happened to the boxes? We have people were told maybe they would consider, according to the indictment, he signaled to me to get rid of stuff. Nothing was gotten rid of. I'm sure the prosecutor looked. I'm sure he was desperate to find some actual physical act that would demonstrate that all this fury from witnesses and supposed statements and so forth, and this is the kind of thing the defense is going to do. They're going to say, what harm are they even talking about? We didn't destroy anything. We were negotiating. The man lives in two places, so he brought boxes with him. As a matter of fact, your guest should know that he put together a book on letters that he received from foreign leaders, including Un from North Korea and so forth. It could be as innocent as that. We haven't had a single argument from any of Trump's lawyers. They haven't even had an opportunity to read this indictment until now to respond to this. So everybody's going through this and going, wow, he could be serving 4 billion years. Wow, he could be doing this. Wow, he could be doing that. It could be awful. This is a strong indictment. And I'm looking for, okay, what was destroyed? Nothing. What was altered? Nothing. Oh, he moved boxes. Okay, he moved boxes. What happened with the box? Nothing. Nothing. And so there are arguments that can be made on a substantive ground, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just here off the top of my head thinking about them. Talk about Hillary Clinton. People, you can't compare this to Hillary Clinton, and they're right. Hillary destroyed 30,000 emails in a way that was a permanent destruction. She wasn't a president or former president. They destroyed cell phones with hammers. There was no warrant. There was no SWAT team. She had a private server in her home. She lied, arguing it wasn't classified information. They found classified information. How is the Department of Justice going to argue that its official government position in 2012 was that they can't bring charges against Hillary Clinton? And their official position today is, oh, we've got false statements, we've got conspiracy to obstruct. Look at all these photos. We got boxes on the floor here. Okay, what happened to any of those documents in those pictures on the floor? Well, they don't tell us. Did somebody steal anything? They don't tell us. Look at the cover. We know that they're classified because we see something's redacted. Okay, so what? What happened to that document? With all the witnesses that they had, all the violations of attorney-client privilege, all the extraordinary authority that these judges gave them in Washington, D.C., which is a controversy that has to be resolved. You do have due process rights. We need to know about that. So I do agree that when you pile on, in the case of Trump, 37 charges, basically 31 of which are the same charge, the retention of documents, you got to peel it away and peel it away and peel it away. But I want the audience to understand there is not a scintilla of information in this 50-page document, in these 38 charges, that a single document was destroyed, that a single document was altered, that a single foreign country got any information of any kind whatsoever. I just wanted to make that point.
Well, I hear you, Mark. And, you know, I guess there is no, I mean, there's no charge here for destruction of documents. That's not any, that's not among these at all. The obstruction is the request to have them returned, and then they're laying out a case here that when they requested them to be returned, there were efforts to make it appear that they didn't have the documents, or maybe they could hide the documents from the government.
There can be all kinds of efforts. There can be all kinds of activity. They can bring in any witness they have. What they don't have is the substance. They have a lot of activity. And when you bring in 100, 200, 500 witnesses, you get a lot of recollections, you get a lot of memories, you get a lot of notes, and that's what this is.
So, Mark, let me just read from this, just because I want to get your reaction to this. This is on page 3. So it says that the president suggested that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that Trump did not have the documents that they called for by the grand jury subpoena, directing the defendant, Waltine Nauta, to move boxes of documents to conceal them from Trump's attorney, the FBI, and the grand jury, suggesting that they hide or destroy documents, and you point out that there's no evidence of destruction, called for in the grand jury subpoena.
You can talk about whatever you want. Just think of this as a matter of logic. We've got dozens and dozens of boxes. Let's move them and conceal them with the Secret Service around, with movers around, with staff around. Does anybody take that seriously? Maybe somebody said it. You know, maybe we can move the document. There's been no challenge to this. There's a lot of ways to question this and to address this. So he moved boxes around. He lives into it. So what? Joe Biden moved boxes around at various places and so forth. Was there a subpoena out there? It doesn't matter. He went into a skiff when he was a senator and he took documents out. And that, in and of itself, is a crime. So there's a lot of issues here, really, that I mean, what's happened here, and I think the other lawyers will agree, is there's so much stuff thrown against the wall here. They had so many witnesses, so many documents, so many notes, that what happens is, and having served a justice, his team sits down, they cherry pick the most favorable points that they can to them, they start the indictment document with the strongest points they think they have, and that's how they lay out the case. It's like having an opening debate. The guy gets up, he makes his opening statement, and then everybody goes home.
Yeah, you know,
that's what this is.
I'm glad you called in, Mark, because, and I want to just remind everyone again of where we are in this process. This is the indictment. This is the accusation. And we have not heard from the other side of this equation. We haven't heard the explanations for why some of these things may or may not have happened from the Trump side. And Mark is expressing some of what I expect we will hear from the Trump side in terms of how this played out. And a lot of what you also see in here in some ways, Mark, reminds me of...
By the way, I haven't talked to the Trump side or any side.
Okay, thank you for making that clear. You know, some of this, and it really, and it will in some ways legally come down to the question of what was acted upon and how were these things acted upon. And in some ways, it reminds me of some of what we talked about during the impeachment situation with the Ukraine situation, things that were said, which a lot of which is very in character with what we've seen from the former president in terms of the way he talks about things. And how do you legally separate that out from the actions that were actually taken and whether or not laws were broken?
Look, this 31 counts on retention could have been one count. Could have been 5 counts. They made it 31 counts. You can bundle them together under one count. You can break them into 5 counts, or you can stretch them into 31 counts. So that's one of the things I think defense will challenge, among other things. But this gives the impression, it certainly gives the impression that Donald Trump was there conspiring with his lawyers, conspiring with his staff, talking to himself in the middle of the night, trying to figure out ways to get rid of all this stuff. And you have to ask yourself why. Is there some crime among these documents? No. Is there something in these documents related to January 6th? Apparently not. Is there something in these documents related to his taxes that he cheated on, maybe? No. Is there something in the documents about some other crime he committed? No. Maybe he literally believed that as the former president, as the president leaving the White House, he had a right to these documents. The idea that they criminalized this case, and virtually this entire document relates to the criminalization of this case, as opposed to a civil or administrative case, is the problem. That they criminalized this case. They didn't do it in Hillary's case, or it would be Hillary in an orange jumpsuit in a federal prison as I speak, serving 120 years.
Mark, let me ask you, because you look at the presidency and the Constitution in all of your writing. Talk to me about the larger picture, because I think this is what is unnerving a lot of Americans on all sides of this equation. We have someone who is a declared candidate. He is currently in the lead. He's a former president of the United States who's been indicted on these charges. And there are similarities here. Every case is different in the cases that we saw with Hillary Clinton. And that's going to make people feel very uncomfortable in a lot of areas of this country. And you have the executive branch overseeing the investigation at the highest level, the president, the Attorney General Merrick Garland. What does this do to the fiber that holds the country together in a time when we're already so divided?
It destroys it. And there's no going back. I was chief of staff to Attorney General Mason. I can tell you now this wouldn't have happened under him. He would have picked up the phone and called, say, Jimmy Carter and say, Jimmy, give us the GD materials now. Don't make me send these people in and so forth. And so give me the material. They're itching here to send you to prison. Give me the stuff. There would have been a conversation, no matter how long it took, because he would have looked at the situation and said, I am not going to destroy this country. Do you know why Ed Meese resigned? He was under attack. He didn't have to resign. He told me, I'm resigning early because I don't want to affect the election with George H.W. Bush. That's what he said to me. And so we have Merrick Garland, who's sitting there, who's conspicuously silent today, even though behind the scenes, whether they want to say it or not, Mr. Smith reports to Mr. Garland. This is not the independent counsel statute. He's special counsel. He appointed this individual. He appointed Mr. Smith. So the attorney general can't have it both ways and say, I'm not involved in it. And they're putting, that information out. And you know what? That would even be worse. That means that bureaucrats are making decisions about the future of the presidency in this country. Does anybody believe that the framers of the Constitution believe that, well, there weren't U.S. attorneys, there was no Department of Justice, there was no attorney general, that if they existed, that they should have this kind of an impact on a presidency? The Espionage Act wasn't passed for this reason. It wasn't passed to gum up the works for a president or a future president or a presidential candidate. It was passed by a rogue president by the name of Woodrow Wilson, who imprisoned 2,000 political opponents who were opposed to World War I. Then they passed the Sedition Act in 1918, amending the Espionage Act, and they started locking up people who dared to speak out. This Espionage Act is a very, very dangerous law in many respects. So to use it and exploit it and turn it on a presidential candidate and a future president by criminalizing this case, which was never supposed to be criminalized against a past president, the Records Act, the Presidential Records Act, purposely passed in 1978, has no criminal provision to avoid situations like this. This is a disaster. This is a mess. And if Mr. Smith succeeds, it will even be worse. And notice how they're dumping all over the judge now. The judge was appointed by Trump. The judge in the case in Washington, D.C., who was handling all the motions decisions of the grand jury, who ruled against Trump every single time, was appointed by Obama. And that judge was replaced by another Obama judge who sits there right now. So now we're going to trash the judge, try and pressure the judge to throw the book at the president and deny all his motions.
All right.
This is what's going on. It is in the middle of a presidential election. What the hell have we become here? And this guy gets up, this guy Smith, who has a record going after the former governor of Virginia, and then he's rebuked by the Supreme Court 8-0. One of the few cases where they all came together.
In Virginia.
Yeah, McDonald.
Yeah.
And ruined his career.
That is true. That is true.
And he does the same to John Edwards in North Carolina, where the jury turned against him because he's known for taking laws and pushing the boundaries as far as he can. And that's exactly what he did here with these pile-on charges, going behind attorney-client privilege, and on and on and on.
Mark Levin. Mark, thank you very much.